Finally, we are in the garage where the rest of this van build will actually take place. Now I'm planning on doing a full interior build on this thing, and these are the only tools that I have. Not only will this be one of the first times I do anything like this, I literally have no woodworking tools, little to no experience, and very little time. So we are gonna see how this goes. And the first thing we are gonna be tackling is the actual floor of the van. Not only will this be a very easy place to start, because it's, well, a rectangle for the most part. Buying all the tools that will enable me to do the floor will enable me to do the rest of the van. So it's a good place to start. I have to build everything on top of the floor anyways, and I should be able to knock it out relatively fast. I still have no idea. Again, we're learning together here. But yeah, all I think I need for now besides the wood is sawhorses, a jigsaw, and a drill. That will allow me to cut out the wood, drill through it, and hopefully bolt it down successfully to the floor of the van. For the floor and the majority of the wood bits that are going to be inside the interior of the van, I'm going to be using a 4x8 sheet of marine grade plywood. That'll be plenty strong, hold up to water, hold up to the vibrations that the van is going to have. And that's a little expensive, but we don't have to use a lot, and I think it's totally worth it to have a little bit better plywood for the interior of the van. But for the tools I'm going to be buying that I'm basically only going to use for this build, I'm going to use one of my favorite stores. Harbor Freight! If you don't know what Harbor Freight is, it's basically like the kind of Walmart of tool places. Really cheap tools, really great prices, and actually a fantastic warranty, but they're not of the highest quality. But that's actually perfect because for what we're doing, I'm gonna be using these things like just for this project, and that's kind of it. So that's kind of exactly what we want. Now we gotta pick up the wood. This is kind of what I was looking for. A harder top, marine grade, and relatively thin. All right, back home to get some floors made. The first step's actually gonna be completely gutting the entire interior of this thing once again. I put the old interior back in after I did the bed liner and everything for a couple trips, and now it's finally time to rip it all back out, completely bare bones, so we can throw the whole new interior back in. But yeah, gotta do that real quick. And now instead of measuring this out and then trying to cut the wood out and hoping that it fits, I'm gonna make just a literal template with this really big cardboard box. Cut this to size and make sure this fits really well inside here, and then trace this out onto the wood and then cut the wood out, and hopefully have a floor that fits very, very well in here. We shall see. And I'm just gonna make the first part over here, shove that in the corner, and then work this down to where it fits just right. I'm gonna trim the cardboard a little bit. All right, so I made a mark right above where I actually want the line to be. I'm gonna take my long ruler here, line it up, put some pressure on it, and now we have a relatively straight line that will hopefully fit perfectly. So let's see, this guy goes in, and just like that, we have about half of the floor completely mapped out. And with literally an identical copy of the piece of cardboard, I can get the other side. And the best part about the cardboard is that I can move it around and see exactly where I want the wood to be. I can also cut out smaller pieces of cardboard and tape them onto this area here, you know, if I wanted to do this area with the wood, or, you know, whatever I wanted to do, I could kind of mix and match and play around with this very inexpensive material before I transfer it to the actual floor. And then I'm simply just going to take some tape and tape the two together, and that will be our floor. Now I'm going to very carefully take this out of here without creasing the cardboard and breaking the tape so it actually keeps its shape. Now I can actually place the floor template on top of the floor material. Now this is a problem I knew I was gonna have. Unfortunately, they really only sell plywood in like a 4x8 sheet, and my floor in the van again is more or less 5x5. So I can't just cut a perfect piece of wood and place it in. It actually has to be two separate pieces, which is a little bit of a bummer, but kind of how it has to go. And I can't decide which way I actually want to do it yet. This is actually kind of what I was wondering. That piece of plywood is 4 feet wide, and I think if I go 4 feet, yeah. So over here is actually where the plywood would stop and the second piece would begin, but this is going to be where the bench seat is anyways. So I can indeed have one big giant floor without it being interrupted essentially, or, you know, being two pieces. So that's good. Sweet, that was literally like on the dot. 4 feet, so got kind of lucky on that one. Also, if I look bad and I sound bad, it's because I feel bad. I don't got the vid, but I got something. And it's like 100 degrees outside, so it is tough, this video. Every Saturday, man, every Saturday. All right, back to work. So I'm gonna take our template here, and this is where I'm going to want the end to be, where our cut to be. Mark that. Take our trusty template off. Now we have these teeny tiny little Sharpie marks on both sides, so I can take my ruler and line it up perfectly with each side. And once that's perfect on each side, I can take these teeny tiny little clamps and actually just clamp it down to the table. This will give us a perfectly straight line from side to side for us to cut along. Then we will grab our jigsaw with a 10-tooth blade. I did 10 tooth because that's on wood that's like a really fine cut. If you do lower than 10, you'll probably get some chips and that kind of stuff. And if you do higher than 10, it'll be even more fine, but it'll take significantly longer. But this cable is only that long, and I thought there was an extension cord here, and there's not. And I have an extension cord, but it's 30 minutes away. So this video will continue tomorrow. Right, you get the idea. Ruler down, cut along the ruler, get a straight line, you know. Okay, it also gives me a good excuse to stop doing manual labor in a 100-degree garage while I'm sick. Okay. All right, we're back. I got 400 milligrams of ibuprofen running through my veins, an extension cord. Let's get cutting. There we go. Definitely put a nice line into the sawhorse. Again, I am not a professional. At all, actually. Actually amateur is kind of still too much. Oh, look at that. That is not bad. It's not exactly perfect, but that is straight enough. And this is literally my second time ever using a jigsaw, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Now I'm just gonna clean up the whole edge of this after cutting it with some 320 grit sandpaper. Get it nice and smooth for the inside of the van. Now it's time to see if it actually fits, or if I'm buying another sheet of plywood. Good. Oh, ho, ho, look at that. Oh, wow. That fits literally perfectly. Again, I have to be pretty dumb to mess this up, honestly, since it's literally a rectangle. But first wood piece that I cut out correctly that actually fits in the van. That is exciting. Now this is the area I was talking about earlier where the whole plywood sheet can't perfectly fill like the whole rectangle of the van floor. This open area where I have to add another piece needed to be either here or over there technically. But I picked over here because the whole bench and bed scenario will be over this. So this seam won't even be visible or even matter in the scheme of things, you know? So I'm actually just gonna measure this real quick because this is literally also just a rectangle. I'm not gonna bother with a cardboard template for this, but that cardboard is gonna come really in handy for like these wall pieces that have a bunch of curves and that kind of deal. And hopefully you get the idea with the templates anyways. I think it worked out quite well. 13 inches from the wall and 61.5 inches across. And our little scrap piece left over actually isn't 61.5 inches long in either way. So I'm just gonna take one 13-inch section at, how many inches do we have? 4 feet, so 48 inches. And then I'll just take another one and add it on. Because again, this part that's gonna be under the bench seat and everything doesn't matter. The actual saw blade wandered just a little bit, but I think we should still be in business. All right, now to see if it actually fits. Oh, there you go. Wow, look at that. That is just about perfect. I do not know if I could have cut that any better. Again, it doesn't need to be this perfect, honestly, because this is all gonna be under and this is gonna be filled with like glue and everything, but not going bad so far. Now just to do this little tiny little corner square over here. And for the final piece, let's see. Look at that. I was actually worried about this part and questioning my ability to cut wood out, you know, very precisely because it's deceivingly difficult in my experience in the past. But this is looking quite nice. Everything's matching up exactly how I want it to. These all match up really good, even though I had to cut out in 3 separate pieces. I'm quite happy with this so far. And the $30 jigsaw from Harbor Freight. I mean, God, that's why I love Harbor Freight. For reference, the cheapest option at Home Depot is close to 100 bucks. So for 30 bucks, you get these kind of results. Totally worth it, totally worth it. Now, I gotta take all this back out so we can clean and prep this surface to actually glue this floor, this subfloor down to the actual van. Now there are holes in the floor of the van already, and I was originally going to use those to actually bolt the floor down, but one that's going to be a lot more steps where I have to actually like countersink bolts and line them up perfectly and all that kind of stuff, which thinking about it a lot more and looking at the scenario, I just don't think we need to bolt it down. Once it's glued in place, everything that's going to be on top of it is actually going to be bolted to the walls. So not only will the glue hold it in place, but everything bolted to the walls will also hold it down in place. And I think that'll be much more than enough to keep it in place. So I'm not even going to bother with the bolts anymore. I'm just going to glue it on down. But first we got to get this surface clean and ready to accept the glue so we get a strong bond. I did just get done taking this van on a trip. So first I'm going to sweep out all the dust and all the loose stuff that's just sitting on top of the sound deadening. And now all these ridges that you see in the actual floor of the van, the glue is gonna go on top of these and the wood's gonna go on top of that. So on all of these, I'm just gonna take a roll of paper towels and some isopropyl alcohol, wipe it off, get it completely clean so the glue sticks really, really well. A little bit of alcohol and get her all prepped up for the glue. And you see, this is exactly why we are doing this. You can see how dirty this paper towel is. We are picking up all that dirt because you don't want that to mess up your adhesion. And now for the glue, we're actually gonna be using another first for me, is the actual like whole caulking gun, right? Smooth rod caulk gun, yes, caulk gun, and construction adhesive to actually glue the floor, subfloor, down to the floor of the van. I don't know why I've never done this before. This is a much cheaper way to do like glue and silicone and all that kind of stuff. Just one of these and then an actual caulking gun. I always thought these were expensive. This was literally $4.50. So that was dumb. But I'm just gonna be using Gorilla Glue's heavy duty construction adhesive ultimate. It just looked like their strongest multi-purpose adhesive. And most importantly, it bonds to wood and can deal very well with heat. Honestly, I think the floor would stay in place just fine even without glue. So I'm not too worried about it. The cool thing about these is that you can cut them to each individual kind of spot. And you know, the higher up you go, the thinner and the tinier the hole and the tinier the stream you'll get, and the lower down you go, the thicker and more stuff you'll have coming out at once. So I'm gonna go right in the middle. And there's our little applicator hole. And we're getting glue out. Look at that. Sweet. So I already filled all those little holes where those old bolts used to go like we talked about. I just want water coming up through those holes underneath the floor. Now we're gonna take our gun and just apply adhesive all along these ribs where the contact point with the wood will be. Now I'm gonna start in the corner and work my way out so I can put it all down and kind of get out of the van that way. Put a nice bead all the way along these ribs. I'm not really worried about how I'm applying it. Once the wood goes down, it'll smear it out and kind of spread it to however it wants, essentially. I feel like a real DIYer with the caulking gun. This is actually super satisfying, just putting it down and putting a line all the way down. I'm actually just gonna wipe down the surface of the wood real quick. Again, just ensuring proper adhesion. And now we're gonna throw her on in. So I placed this down and then slid it towards the actual wall of the van to get it butted up. But you can see whenever I set it down on this little glue patch right here, it kind of squished it down and spread it out, and that's going to be a really good application. That's what all under here, all those ribs look like now that it's all pressed down and squished. So now we got to get these two pieces in. So, and for the finale, bada bing. The van officially has a floor. Look at that, that's awesome. Now, for more fun with the caulking gun, we're gonna be using some bathroom silicone around all the edges of this wood where it meets up with the metal of the van. You really do not want water getting under there and sitting there. Not only could it possibly rust away the floor of the van eventually, but it'll warp and destroy the wood over time. And this, you know, this will essentially be my kitchen and my living room and all this kind of deals. Spills and that kind of stuff are probably gonna happen. And whenever water gets on the floor, you do not want it going around the edges and getting under that wood. I got the kitchen and bath projects silicone because obviously it's much more waterproof, and this one in particular is paintable. A lot of the silicones you can't put paint on at all. So later we can paint over the areas that need to be painted, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna throw this in the caulking gun and then just start working my way around the perimeter of the wood, sealing it in and making this thing hopefully very, very durable. Again, I am an amateur. And still sick. Ugh. So for example, not only am I gonna fill the little area over here with silicone, make sure no water gets over here and under the wood, but these little gaps in between the wood, I'm also gonna fill and just kind of squish some silicone in there. Also, one of the byproducts of me using a caulking gun for the first time is I'm definitely gonna need more silicone. I did not realize how fast I'd be going through this. So here we go. Filling up the gaps. And you see we got a nice clean bead all along the seam between the wood and the van. I'm just gonna run my finger all along, kind of smooth it out, of course with a glove on. And not only will this stop water going from under there in between the cracks like I explained, this will also act as another form of adhesion between the wood and the metal of the van. Another reason I chose silicone and the construction adhesives because they're meant to be used in hot and cold. They're a little bit more like a rubbery adhesive rather than like a hard, you know, super glue kind of adhesive or like an epoxy, which is important because this van is literally going to be going from like 115 degrees in the summer here in Palm Springs, especially whenever it's sitting sitting in the sun. This thing's literally gonna get to like 120 degrees in here. All the way down to whenever I take it to cold places and cold temperatures, it's probably gonna be well below freezing at some points. So the difference between the steel of the van and the wood of the floor and everything else that's gonna be in here and how they expand and contract is gonna be crazy. So we need an adhesive that's gonna kind of flex and change with that as well. And that's designed to put up with that kind of stuff. Obviously this kind of adhesive is made for houses and outdoors, and it's meant to withstand that kind of temperature extreme, you know, really, really highs and really, really lows. We'll see how it actually holds up, because not only is it dealing with the most extreme temperatures, being in the radicalest of climates, but it's dealing with constant vibration, probably a lot of water, humidity, dryness, like the most extreme conditions that something like this and the glue and the wood could be going through. This is all going to be going through. So we'll see how it actually holds up. We'll see if the bonds actually stay. And from all I can tell, I'm doing this the best you could possibly do it. So I'm going to finish the rest of this perimeter, and I think the floor is going to be done for now. Like I thought, I ran out of silicone almost about halfway through, but we got a nice bead all along this edge over here. This edge is really important because this is where like the kitchen and water storage is going to be. And then I sealed up the gaps in between the boards, just kind of pushing silicone in there with the glove. Still gotta do this whole section right here. And then I'm also just gonna glob our silicone all in here and make sure that there's not even a gap here at all and it's just completely filled. So I'll finish that off at a later date. But for now, the van actually has a floor. How cool is this? Well, a subfloor, I guess. This will eventually have like a vinyl on top of it, or wood planks. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do yet. But of course, I gotta build everything else on top of this first, and then the actual floor will go in last. Yeah, this is actually super cool. We hit the first wood project of the van. You know, the majority of this is gonna be woodwork, so this is the first of the woodwork. First of actually securing something into the van that's gonna be permanent, using caulking and all that kind of stuff. That went very well, actually. A lot of people say this stuff takes like weeks. This took 2 days for me. Again, this was probably on the border of like, God, well, that's gotta be like almost 23 hours of work in the last 2 days, but only 2 days. So just getting this done feels really, really good. I'm slowly building confidence for the rest of the build, because this is relatively simple. The rest of it's gonna be a little bit more complicated. But I think we are definitely on track to, 1, do this very, very cheaply, and 2, do it hopefully under 2 months. But again, we gotta see, my skills are bound to run out somewhere. We got time to edit for 2 days straight and do the whole thing over again on the next project. Just to make sure I didn't completely screw it up. Ah, there you go. Okay, thank God.